While the modern-day NFL is dominated by high-flying quarterbacks, the importance of a punishing, old-fashioned running game can never be overstated. The Detroit Lions are the living embodiment of this, having quickly elevated themselves from laughingstock to NFL powerhouse in just a few seasons, with sights set for a Lombardi trophy. Their secret? Impeccable roster management, elite coaching, and a devastating run game led by the most feared duo in the league. Meet Sonic and Knuckles, the unstoppable running back tandem powering the Lions' championship run. The Detroit Lions have long been one of the NFL's most frustrated franchises, treating fans to just 3 playoff berths, no playoff victories, and no division titles in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. Fortunately, the arrival of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes in 2021 brought about a change in fortunes, with a 9-8 season in 2022 suggesting that playoff success might not be too far away. Having won 8 of their last games to close out that season, the 2023 draft and free agency class was an opportunity to add the finishing touches, which is exactly what Holmes and Campbell did. An exciting draft class that saw Detroit select 4 players in the first 2 rounds was headlined by Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who the team selected 12th overall, having traded down from pick 6. Taking a running back that high in the draft will always raise some eyebrows, but this selection was even more puzzling when you consider that Detroit had also opted to bring in David Montgomery in free agency, awarding him a 3-year, $18 million deal. During the pre-draft process, Gibbs was highly regarded as one of the most exciting offensive players in the 2023 class, generally slotting in behind Bijan Robinson on most people's big board, but not by much. Gibbs was initially rated as a 3-star prospect at Dalton High School, but he saw this rise to a 4-star prospect rating thanks to a stellar senior campaign in which he led the state with 2,554 rushing yards and 40 touchdowns. This unsurprisingly attracted the eye of many major college programs, but he decided to stay close to home and become a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. Across 2 years at Georgia Tech, Gibbs racked up 1,206 yards and 8 touchdowns at 5.2 yards per carry, while also adding 760 yards and 5 more touchdowns through the air. He also proved himself as a handy returner, earning an honorable mention as an All-ACC return specialist in his freshman season. It was clear that Gibbs had an incredibly high ceiling, but one that was being capped by a poor Yellow Jackets team who won just 6 games across those 2 seasons. Gibbs wanted to prove himself on a bigger stage while also fighting for a championship, and the best place to do that was under Nick Saban in Alabama. While 2 losses in the regular season would take away any chance of playoff football for the Crimson Tide, Gibbs thrived against the tougher opposition. He hit career highs almost across the board, with 926 yards and 7 touchdowns at an impressive 6.1 yards per carry, to go along with 44 receptions for 444 yards and 3 more scores through the air. He was explosive, versatile, and absolutely held up in the SEC, making it onto the second-team All-American roster for that 2022 season. His decision to bet on himself and transfer had paid off, and now it was time to test himself against the pros. He became a Detroit Lion with the 12th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, joining the team's new signing, David Montgomery, in the running back room. Montgomery had already spent 4 seasons in the NFL by the time he joined forces with Jahmyr Gibbs. His journey began at Iowa State, where he played in all 12 games as a true freshman and led the team with 563 yards at an average of 5.2 yards per carry. That freshman campaign showed the Cyclone staff that Montgomery was ready to shoulder more of the load as a sophomore, handling 258 carries in 2017 for 1,147 yards and 11 touchdowns at 4.4 yards per carry. With Montgomery barreling over defenders, Iowa State improved from 3 wins in 2016 to an 8-5 record in 2017, earning their first official ranking since the 2005 season. For his efforts, Montgomery was named the first-team All-American, which was a feat he repeated again in 2018, thanks to a career-high 1,216 yards and 13 touchdowns at 4.7 yards per carry. Having been one of the most dependable and physical running backs in the college game for 2 straight seasons, Montgomery declared for the 2019 NFL Draft, where he became a Chicago Bear in the 3rd round. Montgomery's first season in the NFL was solid, but not spectacular, averaging 3.7 yards per carry for his 889 yards and 6 touchdowns. As a sophomore, though, head coach Matt Nagy promised to get him more involved, which he did, giving him a career-high 247 attempts, which Montgomery took for 1,070 yards and 8 touchdowns. This was also Montgomery's most effective season as a pass catcher, reeling in 54 receptions for 438 yards and 2 more scores through the air. Unfortunately, Montgomery's time in Chicago coincided with an all-too-familiar period of disappointing play for the franchise, and with Montgomery not reaching 1,000 yards in either of his next 2 seasons, the team felt comfortable enough letting him go after the 2022 season. Montgomery wouldn't be the first player to have been frustrated with his time in Chicago, and it probably came as a relief for him to sign with a Detroit team who were on the up in 2023. Detroit had just won 8 of 10 games to close out the 2022 season, with Jared Goff teaming up nicely with sophomore receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown to offer a potent threat through the air. Jamal Williams was the team's leading rusher with 1,066 yards that year, but with him entering his 7th season and coming to the end of his contract, it was time for Detroit to address the position. Enter Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. This partnership was an intriguing prospect, combining the physical between the tackle's ability of Montgomery with the explosive big play ability of Gibbs. What was particularly exciting, though, is that the duo would be operating behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, headlined by third-year right tackle Penei Sewell, one of the best at his position. For Gibbs, being drafted by the Lions turned out to be the perfect landing spot. Montgomery's veteran presence gave him a role model to learn from as he took his first steps in the pro game, and Montgomery thrived in his leadership role. The veteran running back scored 6 touchdowns across his first 4 games of the 2023 season and passed the 100-yard milestone twice, as Detroit won 4 of their first 5 games. Gibbs played more of a supportive role in those early stages of the season, but Dan Campbell had no problem handing him the keys when Montgomery was sidelined by an injury in Week 6. The increased action led to Gibbs posting his first career touchdown against Baltimore in Week 7 before landing 152 yards and 1 touchdown on the Raiders in Week 8. David Montgomery returned to the lineup after the team's Week 9 bye, giving the league their first consistent look at the dangerous backfield duo. By the end of the season, David Montgomery had 1,015 yards and 13 touchdowns at 4.6 yards per carry, closely followed by Gibbs's 945 yards and 10 touchdowns at 5.2 yards per carry, also chipping in with 316 yards and 1 more score through the air. The duo then played their part in helping propel the Lions through the playoffs to the NFC Championship game, winning the team their first playoff victory since 1991 in the process. Unfortunately, they fell just short of the Super Bowl after being defeated by the 49ers, but there was clearly a lot to be excited about. Their 12-5 record proved that they were now a force to be reckoned with in the NFC, and their dynamic running back duo was a big reason why. Gibbs and Montgomery had joined a Lions franchise that was starved of anything to cheer about, and were the driving force in revitalizing Motor City, treating fans to their first playoff victory in over 30 years, and offering hope that many more were right around the corner. Both players received PFF rushing grades of over 80, powering the Lions to the 5th most rushing yards per game with 135.9. Of course, the supremely talented offensive line deserves some credit, but both Gibbs and Montgomery posted at least 3 yards per carry after contact each, which ranked them both inside the top 13 amongst running backs for that category. They were the perfect partnership, with Montgomery's physicality making him difficult to tackle and reliable in short yardage situations, and with Gibbs providing the big play threat as both a rusher and a receiver. But don't be fooled, Montgomery is not just a power back. He can make defenders miss with his shiftiness as well, and Gibbs is more than capable of finding a lane and powering up the middle. That's what makes them so special as a duo. In addition to dominating on the ground, their presence alone made life easier for the rest of the offense. With defenses having to commit to stopping the run, Detroit's play-action game soared, with Jared Goff posting the 2nd most yards from play-action pass attempts with 1,502, 10 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. Goff posted his highest yardage total as a Lion that year with 4,575 yards, and his running back tandem were a big reason why. Goff is talented for sure, but he's not a quarterback that you want to pile too much responsibility on. He thrives with a good run game, and that's exactly what Gibbs and Montgomery gave him. Of course, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson also deserves a lot of credit, and Lions fans were delighted when he returned for the 2024 season instead of taking a head coaching role. He did so because he recognized that something special was being built in Detroit, and the expectations for the 2024 Lions were now Super Bowl or bust. Nothing that happened over the first half of the season did anything to dampen that excitement. The Lions won 10 of their first 11 games, and Gibbs and Montgomery were even more lethal. The pair took it in turns to lead the team in rushing, running through, and running over their opponents with no mercy. Either one of the dynamic duo scored a touchdown in each of those first 11 games, and their relentless production meant that a suitable nickname was in order. That nickname is Sonic and Knuckles, with the speedy Gibbs taking on the role of Sonic and the powerful Montgomery taking on the role of Knuckles. It is a fitting name and one that looks sure to stick around, as Sonic and Knuckles have proved utterly dominant in the 2024 season. They are the perfect combination of speed, power, elusiveness, and clinical finishing ability. They benefit from a fantastic offensive system and offensive line, but they make the most of it. If one doesn't get you, then you can be sure that the other one will. With that in mind, surely there is nothing that will stop Sonic and Knuckles from leading the Detroit Lions to Super Bowl glory. But what do you make of this running back duo? And where do you think they rank in NFL history? Let me know in the comments.